The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets waited in the darkness between worlds. In the year 2347, they finally had their answer. Captain Daniel Brooks stood on the bridge of the starship Endurance, watching the swirling lights of hyperspace fade away. The ship had traveled for 3 months through the emptiness of space, and now they had arrived at their destination, Kepler 442b, a world that scientists believed could support human life. Daniel was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. He had commanded ships for 20 years, but this mission was different. This was humanity's first journey to a potentially habitable world outside their own solar system. History was being made, and he was the one making it. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos sat at her station, her dark eyes fixed on the glowing screens in front of her. She was the ship's tactical officer, a woman who had grown up in the slums of São Paulo and fought her way into the space program through sheer determination. Nothing had ever been given to her. Everything she had earned. "Captain," Maria said, her voice tight with concern, "I am picking up energy signatures from the planet's surface. Big ones. This is not a primitive world." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. They had expected to find an empty planet, perhaps with simple life forms. Not technology, not civilization. Before he could respond, the communications officer spoke up. Ensign Kevin Park was young, barely 25, with a nervous energy that sometimes annoyed his crewmates. But he was good at his job, and right now his face was pale with worry. "Sir, we are being hailed. Audio only." Daniel nodded. "Put it through." The message that came through the speakers was cold and emotionless. The ship's computer translated it into English, but the meaning was clear in any language. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Vorthak Dominion space. Your ship and crew are now property of the Dominion. Resistance will result in immediate termination." The bridge went silent. Daniel looked at his first officer, Commander Lisa Monroe. She was a woman of few words, but her expression said everything. This was bad. "This is Captain Daniel Brooks of the Earth vessel Endurance," Daniel said, keeping his voice calm. "We come in peace and mean no harm. We did not know this space was claimed." The response was not words. It was the sound of weapons locking onto their ship. And then, from behind the planet's moon, 3 massive warships emerged. They were unlike anything human engineers had ever built. Dark and angular, covered in spikes and strange symbols. They looked like something from a nightmare. Maria's fingers flew across her console. "Captain, those ships are each 5 times our size. Their weapons are charging. We cannot win this fight." Daniel knew she was right. The Endurance was an exploration vessel, not a warship. It had some defensive weapons, but nothing that could stand against these monsters. "All hands, this is the captain," Daniel said over the ship's intercom. "Prepare for possible hostile boarding. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist." It was the hardest order he had ever given. The Vorthak ship surrounded the Endurance and fired precise shots that disabled the engines and weapons. Then smaller craft launched from the alien vessels, attaching to the human ship's hull. Within minutes, the sound of cutting tools echoed through the corridors. The aliens that poured through the breaches were terrifying. They stood over 2 meters tall, with hard purple exoskeletons that looked like armor. They had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws, and their heads were dominated by large compound eyes that reflected no warmth or understanding. They moved with a clicking mechanical efficiency that made them seem more like machines than living beings. The crew of the Endurance, all 240 of them, were gathered in the main cargo bay. Armed Vorthak soldiers surrounded them, weapons pointed at their heads. Daniel stood at the front of his people, trying to project a calm he did not feel. A Vorthik larger than the others approached. His exoskeleton was darker, almost black, and he wore decorations that suggested high rank. When he spoke, the translator device on his chest converted his clicking language into words. "I am Overlord Crix. You belong to the Dominion now." Daniel stepped forward. "We are explorers. Peaceful explorers. We meant no offense by entering your space." Crix made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. It was an ugly sound, filled with contempt. Peaceful? Explorers? These words mean nothing to the Dominion. You are small, soft, weak. Your only value is as laborers. Those who work will be fed. Those who resist will die. This is the law of the Dominion. The people of Earth will come looking for us, Daniel said. They will not abandon us. Crix moved closer until his compound eyes were centimeters from Daniel's face. The alien smelled of something chemical, something wrong. Let them come. The Dominion has conquered 17 species. Your people will simply be the 18th. We have crushed civilizations that span dozens of worlds. What is one small planet of soft creatures to us? Daniel did not look away. You might be surprised. Crix struck him across the face with one of his clawed hands. Daniel fell to the ground, blood streaming from a gash on his cheek. Maria moved to help him, but Vorthik soldiers blocked her path. Take them to the transport ships, Crix ordered. Separate them. Send them to the labor camps. And this one, he pointed at Daniel. Bring him to me personally. I want to learn everything about Earth. Everything about its defenses. Everything about its weaknesses. As the humans were herded out of the cargo bay, Maria managed to catch Daniel's eye. He gave her a small nod. It was a message she understood. Stay strong. Stay alive. Help will come. She was not sure she believed it. But she held on to the hope anyway. Because hope was all they had left. The transport ships carried the crew of the Endurance away from their vessel, away from each other, toward a nightmare they could not yet imagine. Behind them, the Endurance drifted in space, a broken shell that had once carried human dreams to the stars. On Vorthik Prime, the labor camps waited, and the Dominion had no idea what it had just awakened. The labor camps of Vorthik Prime were designed to break spirits. They were built in the harshest places on the planet, where the environment itself was a weapon. Some were in frozen wastelands where the cold could kill in minutes. Others were in volcanic regions where the air burned the lungs and the ground could melt through boots. The Vorthik believed that suffering made workers obedient. They had used this method on 17 species before, and it had always worked. Maria Santos arrived at Camp 12 on the third day after capture. The transport ship landed on a platform carved into the side of a massive volcano. Heat hit her like a physical wall when the doors opened. The air smelled of sulfur and ash, and the sky above was dark with smoke. She was pushed out of the ship along with 40 other humans, including a young engineer named Chris Palmer. Chris had been part of the technical crew on the Endurance, responsible for keeping the ship's systems running. He was in his late 20s, with messy brown hair and the kind of face that smiled easily. Even now, surrounded by armed guards on an alien world, he managed a small grin when he caught Maria's eye. Beautiful place, he said quietly. Reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen when she burned dinner. Maria almost laughed despite everything. She decided then that she liked this young man. The camp was a collection of low metal buildings, arranged around a central mine shaft. The shaft went deep into the volcano, where prisoners extracted rare minerals used in Vorthik technology. The work was dangerous. The tunnels were hot, filled with toxic gases, and prone to collapse. The Vorthik did not care. Workers were replaceable. The camp commander was a Vorthik named Overseer Zeth. He was smaller than most of his kind, but his cruelty made up for his size. During the first day's orientation, he made the rules clear. You will work 16 hours. You will sleep 6 hours. You will eat 2 meals. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not gather in groups of more than 3. You will not attempt escape. The penalty for all violations is death. Maria watched the other prisoners as Zeth spoke. Some were crying. Some looked ready to give up. But others had a different look in their eyes. A look of defiance, of anger. These were the ones she needed to find. These were the ones who would help her survive. The first weeks were brutal. The heat in the mines was unbearable. The tools they were given were heavy and crude. The Vorthic guards watched constantly, ready to punish any sign of weakness. Many prisoners collapsed. Some died. The Vorthic simply dragged the bodies away and sent for replacements. But Maria noticed something the Vorthic did not. The humans were adapting. They were learning to conserve energy, to help each other when guards were not looking, to share food and water. They were building connections, forming bonds that the Vorthic did not understand. Chris Palmer became her closest ally. His engineering mind found ways to make the work easier, small tricks that saved energy and reduced injuries. He also began studying the Vorthic technology, learning how their systems worked. Their machines are good, he told Maria one night as they huddled in their cramped sleeping quarters. But they are not flexible. Everything is centralized. One central computer controls everything in this camp. The power grid, the force fields, the communications. If someone could get to that computer, they could shut it all down. Maria filed this information away. It might be useful someday. In Camp 7, far across the planet, Captain Daniel Brooks was facing a different kind of torture. Overlord Crix wanted information about Earth, and he was willing to do anything to get it. Every day, Daniel was taken to an interrogation room. The room was bare except for a metal chair and various devices whose purposes Daniel tried not to think about. Crix asked questions about Earth's defenses, its population centers, its military capabilities. Daniel gave him nothing. "You are stubborn," Crix said after another fruitless session. "Your species is physically weak. Why do you resist?" Daniel looked up through swollen eyes. "Because we are not just our bodies. We are more than that. We have something you do not understand." "What is that?" "Each other." Crix made that ugly laughing sound again. "Sentiment. A weakness. In the Dominion, we do not have such attachments. We serve the whole. Individuals do not matter. That is why you will lose." Crix hit him again. But Daniel did not stop believing what he had said. Back on Earth, the disappearance of the Endurance had caused a crisis. When the ship missed its first scheduled check-in, there was concern. When it missed the second, there was alarm. By the time a full week had passed with no contact, Admiral Patricia Coleman knew something terrible had happened. Patricia was 62 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the military. She had fought in the resource wars of the 2280s, commanded ships during the asteroid mining conflicts, and helped build the modern space fleet from nothing. She had gray hair cut short, a face lined with years of hard decisions, and eyes that could freeze a subordinate at 20 meters. She convened an emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Council. The council was made up of representatives from every major nation, all of them united by the common goal of protecting humanity among the stars. "We must assume the Endurance has encountered a hostile force," Patricia said, her voice steady. "We cannot know what kind of force without more information. But we do know this. 240 of our people are missing. We do not abandon our people. Ever." The debate was short. The council voted unanimously to authorize a rescue mission. Ships would be built. Soldiers would be trained. Whatever had taken the Endurance would learn that humanity protected its own. How long until we are ready? One of the council members asked Patricia did her calculations. 6 months? Maybe less if we push hard. Will our people survive that long? Patricia thought of Daniel Brooks, a man she had served with years ago. A man who never gave up, no matter how bad things got. If anyone can survive, they can. We just need to give them something to hold on to. We need to let them know we are coming. She did not know how she would do that, but she knew she would find a way. In the camps, the humans waited. They suffered. They struggled, but they did not break, because deep in their hearts, they knew a truth that the Vorthic could never understand. Humanity never abandoned its own. Help would come, and when it did, there would be a reckoning. 6 months had passed since the capture of the Endurance crew. The Vorthic expected broken slaves by now. They expected humans who had learned their place, who worked without complaint, who had accepted their fate. They were wrong. In every camp across Vorthic Prime, something was happening. It started small. A whispered conversation here. A shared meal there. A message passed through carefully established channels. The humans were organizing, and the Vorthic had no idea that Maria Santos had become one of the leaders of this secret resistance. Her tactical training made her valuable, but it was her spirit that truly inspired others. She refused to show weakness in front of the guards. She helped those who struggled. She remembered every cruelty and stored it away. Fuel for the fire burning inside her. The resistance network connected the camps through methods the Vorthic never suspected. Some guards, it turned out, could be bribed. The Dominion paid its soldiers poorly, and human prisoners had managed to steal small valuables from the mines. These trinkets bought moments of privacy, opportunities to pass messages, chances to coordinate. We cannot wait for rescue forever, Maria told her inner circle during a secret meeting in an abandoned section of the mines. The group included Chris Palmer, a former Marine named Tony Garcia, a doctor named Susan Cole, and a communications expert named Adam Wright. We need to create our own chance. Chris had been studying the Vorthic systems for months. He had learned their language, understood their technology, mapped out their weaknesses. Now he shared what he had discovered. The Vorthic control everything from a central hub in their capital city. Power, communications, security. All of it flows through one location. If we could get there, if we could shut it down, even for a few hours, we could create chaos across the entire northern hemisphere. Tony Garcia leaned forward. He was a big man with scars on his arms from months of brutal labor, but his eyes were sharp and eager. What kind of chaos? The force fields around every camp would fail. The guard communications would go dark. The automated defense systems would shut down. Chris paused. Our people could escape. Susan Cole shook her head. Escape to where? We are on an alien planet. Where would we go? We do not need to go anywhere, Maria said. We just need to cause enough trouble. If Earth is sending help, they need an opening. We can give them that opening. The plan was dangerous. It was probably suicide. But it was also hope, and hope was something the Vorthic had tried to crush for 6 months without success. They began to prepare. Weapons were crafted in secret, crude things made from mining tools and stolen metal. They were nothing compared to Vorthic guns, but they were better than bare hands. Fighters were trained in hidden corners of the mines, learning combat techniques that humans had developed over thousands of years. The Vorthic were strong, but they were also predictable. They fought the same way every time. Humans did not. Maria personally trained a group of 30 fighters. She taught them to move quietly, to strike at weak points, to use their smaller size as an advantage rather than a weakness. The Vorthic have hard shells, she explained during one session. But there are gaps. Here, at the joints. Here, at the neck. Here, at the base of the skull. Hit these spots hard and fast, and even a human can kill a Vorthik. Her students practiced until the movements became natural. They would only get one chance at this. They had to be ready. Meanwhile, Captain Daniel Brooks was still alive in Camp 7. His body was broken from months of interrogation, but his mind remained sharp. He had managed to establish contact with the resistance through a sympathetic Vorthik guard who had grown curious about these strange, resilient creatures. The message Brooks sent was short: hold fast. Help is coming. He had no way of knowing if it was true. But faith was sometimes more powerful than knowledge. In the blackness of space, his faith was being rewarded. The United Earth Defense Fleet had launched 2 weeks earlier. 27 warships, carrying 15,000 soldiers, armed with the best weapons humanity could build. Admiral Patricia Coleman commanded from the flagship Resolution, a massive carrier that was the pride of Earth's fleet. Patricia spent most of her time in the command center, studying star charts and intelligence reports. Her analysts had managed to intercept some Vorthik communications, piecing together information about the Dominion's military capabilities. They outnumber us, her intelligence officer, Commander Jake Miller, reported. Their ships are bigger and more heavily armed. Their technology is more advanced. Patricia nodded slowly. What about their tactics? Rigid, predictable. They always use the same formations, the same attack patterns. They have conquered 17 species using these methods. And those species? Most were peaceful. None had faced real war for generations. They were not prepared for violence on this scale. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. Then the Vorthik have never faced anything like us. Humanity's history was written in blood. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other. They had developed warfare into an art form. They had built weapons that could destroy cities, strategies that could topple empires. It was not something to be proud of, but it was something to use. The fleet traveled through hyperspace, closing the distance to Vorthik Prime. Patricia called a meeting of her senior officers to discuss the final battle plan. We will be outnumbered 3-1, she said, her voice calm. Their ships are more powerful individually. In a straight fight, they would destroy us. She paused. So we will not fight straight. She activated a holographic display showing the Vorthik system. Their fleet will try to intercept us at the edge of the system. They will expect us to engage in a conventional battle. We will not. Our ships are smaller but faster. We will use that. We will break their formation, isolate their vessels, and destroy them piece by piece. And if that does not work? One of the captains asked. Patricia met his eyes. Then we die trying. Our people are on that planet. They are counting on us. Failure is not an option. The room was silent. Then, one by one, the officers nodded. They understood. They were ready. Back on Vorthik Prime, Maria received word that the human fleet had been detected entering the system. The time had come. We move tonight, she told her fighters. Whatever happens, remember why we are doing this. For our people. For Earth. For everyone who did not survive to see this day. They gathered their weapons and said their quiet goodbyes. Some prayed. Some simply sat in silence, preparing themselves for what was to come. Maria looked at Chris Palmer, who had become like a brother to her over these terrible months. Are you ready? He grinned, that same easy grin he had worn on the first day. I was born ready. Let us show these bugs what humans can do. The night was dark as they slipped out of the camp, moving through shadows toward the capital city and the control hub that held the key to everything above them. The stars burned with the fire of approaching ships. The battle for Vorthik Prime was about to begin. The Vorthik fleet moved to meet the humans at the edge of their system. Overlord Crix watched from his command ship, the Dominant Will, as his forces arranged themselves in their standard defensive formation. 90 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons, formed a wall between the human fleet and Vorthik Prime. Crix felt nothing but contempt. He had studied the intercepted reports about the human ships. They were small. Their weapons were primitive. Their numbers were laughable. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. "The soft creatures are brave," Crix said to his officers. "I will give them that. Stupid, but brave. They have come across the galaxy to die for 200 slaves." His second-in-command, a veteran named Vorth, made the clicking sound that served as Vorthik agreement. "They do not understand their place. We will teach them." Crix gave the order to advance. The Vorthik fleet surged forward, confident in their superiority. On the Resolution, Admiral Patricia Coleman watched the enemy approach. Her face was calm, but her heart was pounding. Everything depended on the next few hours. The fate of the prisoners, the fate of her fleet, perhaps the fate of humanity itself. "All ships, this is the Admiral," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "You know what we face. You know what is at stake. Remember your training. Trust your crewmates. And remember this: they took our people. Today, we take them back." The first shots were fired at extreme range. Vorthik energy weapons lit up the darkness of space, slamming into human shields. Two destroyers, the Valor and the Defiance, took heavy damage in the opening moments. The Valor lost power and began to drift. The Defiance exploded, killing all 300 crew members instantly. The humans pushed forward anyway. Patricia had spent weeks developing her strategy. The Vorthik expected a conventional battle, 2 lines of ships blasting at each other until one side was destroyed. The humans refused to cooperate. "Fighter squadrons, launch," Patricia ordered. "All ships, break formation. Execute attack pattern Delta." The human fleet split apart. Instead of a single line, they became dozens of smaller groups, each one moving independently. The larger Vorthik ships, designed for head-on combat, struggled to track the nimble human vessels. The fighter squadrons were the real surprise. Small one-pilot craft that the Vorthik had dismissed as insignificant suddenly became deadly threats. They swarmed around the larger ships, targeting specific weak points that human analysts had identified. Communication arrays, sensor clusters, engine vents. "Their weapons are hitting our weak points," a Vorthik officer reported to Crix, confusion in his voice. "They know where to strike." "Impossible," Crix said. "They have never fought us before." How could they know? The answer was simple, though Crix would never understand it. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other. They had become experts at finding weaknesses, exploiting vulnerabilities, adapting to unexpected situations. The Vorthik had conquered species that had forgotten how to fight. Humanity had never forgotten. The battle raged for hours. Human ships darted through the Vorthik formation, firing and moving, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They took losses. The cruiser Independence was torn apart by concentrated fire. The destroyer Horizon was rammed by a damaged Vorthik vessel and both ships were destroyed. But for every human ship lost, 2 or 3 Vorthik vessels were disabled or destroyed. Crix watched his fleet being torn apart and could not understand what was happening. This was not how war was supposed to work. The stronger force was supposed to win. The Dominion was supposed to be invincible. "Pull back," he finally ordered, his voice filled with an emotion he had never felt before. Fear. "Retreat to the planet. Activate the orbital defenses." The Vorthik fleet, or what remained of it, fled toward Vorthik Prime. Fewer than 40 ships out of the original 90 were still operational. The humans pursued, not letting them rest, not letting them regroup. On the planet's surface, Maria Santos and her team had reached the outskirts of the capital city. The journey through the wilderness had been difficult. Vorthic patrols were everywhere, and the team had been forced to fight twice, losing 5 people in the process. But they had made it. The control hub was located in the center of the city, a massive structure that rose above the surrounding buildings like a monument to Vorthic power. Getting inside would not be easy. "There are too many guards," Tony Garcia said, studying the building through stolen binoculars. "Even if we get through, we will never make it to the control room." Maria was about to respond when the sky lit up. Looking up, she saw streaks of fire crossing the darkness. Ships were burning in orbit. Ships were falling. "The fleet is here," she whispered. "They actually came." Chris Palmer touched her shoulder. "Then, we need to give them their opening. Whatever it takes." Maria nodded. She looked at her team, 25 survivors who had followed her through hell. They were tired, hungry, and terrified. But they were also determined. "We are not going to sneak in," she said. "We are going to walk through the front door. They will expect us to hide, to run, to act like the slaves they think we are. We are going to show them they were wrong about us." The attack on the control hub was brutal and direct. The humans charged from multiple directions at once, screaming at the top of their lungs. The Vorthic guards were caught off guard. They had never seen prisoners fight like this. They had never seen anyone fight like this. Maria led the main assault. She had a makeshift blade in each hand, and she used them with deadly precision. The Vorthic were strong, but they were slow. She slipped past their defenses, striking at the weak points she had taught her people to target. One guard fell, then another, then a third. Tony Garcia was beside her, using his massive strength to tear weapons from Vorthic hands and turn them against their owners. Susan Cole followed behind, tending to the wounded, keeping people fighting when they wanted to give up. They pushed into the building, leaving a trail of fallen guards behind them. The alarms were screaming now. Reinforcements would be coming. They had minutes at most. Chris Palmer sprinted ahead with Adam Wright. They needed to reach the control room. Everything depended on it. They found it on the top floor. A massive chamber filled with screens and consoles and humming machinery. 2 Vorthic technicians looked up in shock as the humans burst through the door. Tony Garcia dealt with them before they could call for help. Chris ran to the main console. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. He had studied this technology for months. He knew what to do. "I need 3 minutes," he said. "You have 2, Maria replied, turning to face the door. She could hear Vorthic soldiers coming up the stairs. Lots of them. The next 2 minutes were the longest of her life. She and the remaining fighters held the doorway against wave after wave of Vorthic attackers. They were losing people with every assault. But they held. "Got it," Chris shouted. The lights flickered. Then, across the entire northern hemisphere, everything went dark. In the camps, the force fields vanished. The electronic locks on the cells clicked open. The guard communications went silent. And everywhere, humans began to rise. In orbit, Admiral Coleman saw the planet's defenses go offline. She did not know how or why, but she knew an opportunity when she saw one. All ships, commence landing operations. Get our people off that planet. The shuttles launched, carrying thousands of soldiers toward the surface. The battle was not over, but the tide had turned. Humanity had come for its people, and nothing was going to stop them. The liberation of Vorthic Prime took 3 days. 3 days of chaos, of fighting, of desperate struggles in cities and camps across the planet. 3 days that changed the galaxy forever. When the power grid fell, the humans in the camps did not hesitate. Months of planning, of secret training, of stored anger came together in a wave of rebellion that swept across the northern hemisphere. Guards who had spent months torturing prisoners suddenly found themselves facing enemies who had nothing left to lose. In Camp 12, the prisoners overwhelmed the guards within an hour. Overseer Zeth, who had promised death for any violation of his rules, was captured alive. The humans wanted him to see what was coming. They wanted him to understand what his cruelty had created. In Camp 7, Captain Daniel Brooks walked out of his cell for the first time in 6 months. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. A young soldier from the Resolution found him wandering through the chaos and helped him to safety. "We came, sir," the soldier said. "Just like you said we would." Daniel smiled through cracked lips. "I never doubted it. Not for 1 second." In the capital city, Maria Santos and her team fought their way out of the control hub. They had lost 12 people in the assault, including Adam Wright, who had died holding the door while Chris completed his work. Maria would remember their names for the rest of her life. The Earth soldiers found them on the streets, surrounded by fallen Vorthic guards, out of ammunition and fighting with their bare hands. When the shuttle landed and human soldiers in proper armor poured out, Maria finally allowed herself to believe it was over. Chris Palmer sat down on the ground and started laughing. He could not stop. 6 months of terror and suffering, and they had survived. They had won. Overlord Crix tried to flee. While his fleet burned in orbit and his cities fell into chaos, he made his way to a private shuttle, planning to escape to Dominion space and call for reinforcements. He never made it. Patricia Coleman had anticipated the escape attempt. She had fighters watching every launch point on the planet. When Crix's shuttle lifted off, it was intercepted within minutes. He was brought before Captain Daniel Brooks in the central square of the capital city. The square was filled with human soldiers and freed prisoners, all watching to see what would happen. Crix looked smaller than Daniel remembered. His exoskeleton was cracked in places, and one of his arms hung at an odd angle. He no longer seemed frightening. He seemed pathetic. "You should have killed us when you had the chance," Daniel said quietly. Crix's compound eyes reflected the fires burning across his capital. "What will you do with us? Exterminate our species? Take revenge for what was done to you?" Daniel considered the question. Part of him wanted revenge. The Vorthok had enslaved and killed his people. They had tortured him personally for months. They deserved to suffer, but revenge was not who humans were. Not at their best. Not when it mattered. "We are going to do something you never expected," Daniel said. "We are going to let you live." Crix made a sound of disbelief. "Why?" "Because we are not like you. We do not enslave. We do not conquer. We explore. We build. We protect." Daniel stepped closer. "But understand this. The Dominion is over. You will free every species you have enslaved. You will pay for the damage you have done. And if you ever threaten another world, another people, we will come back. And next time, we will not be merciful." The treaty that followed became known as the Vorthic Accords. The Dominion was dissolved. Its 17 conquered species were freed. Their worlds returned to them. The Vorthic were confined to their home system, stripped of their military, watched by a permanent human presence. Many of the freed species asked to join with humanity. They had seen what humans could do. They wanted that protection for themselves. The foundation was laid for what would eventually become the Galactic Coalition, an alliance of dozens of species united by shared values and mutual defense. Maria Santos returned to Earth a hero. She was awarded the Medal of Valor, the highest honor the military could give. She accepted it with quiet dignity, but she told reporters that the true heroes were those who did not make it home. She made sure their names were remembered. She stayed in the service, eventually rising to the rank of admiral. She spent the rest of her career protecting humanity and its allies, making sure that what happened on Vorthic Prime would never happen to anyone again. Chris Palmer returned to Earth and became one of the most important scientists of his generation. He used his knowledge of Vorthic technology to advance human engineering by decades. Jump drives, energy shields, medical technology that could heal wounds that would have been fatal before. He never forgot what he had learned in the camps. That despair was a choice, and that hope was a weapon. Admiral Patricia Coleman was promoted to Fleet Commander, the highest military rank in human history. Under her leadership, the Earth Defense Fleet grew into a force that could protect not just humanity, but all the species that looked to them for guidance. She retired at 75, having never lost another ship to a hostile force. Captain Daniel Brooks returned to space. He could not stay on Earth, could not stay anywhere safe and comfortable. The stars were his home. He commanded a new ship, the Resilience, and led new missions of exploration into unknown space. But wherever he went, he carried the memory of those months in captivity, the memory of what humans could endure, the memory of what they could overcome. The galaxy had learned a simple truth in those 3 days on Vorthic Prime, a truth that would shape interstellar politics for centuries to come. You do not mess with humans, because when you take what is theirs, when you hurt their people, when you push them to the edge, they do not break. They do not surrender. They do not give up. They push back, they adapt. They overcome. And they always protect their own. The stars still called to humanity. But now, when they answered that call, they did not go alone. They went as part of something larger. A community of species who had learned to trust each other, to protect each other, to build something better than any of them could build alone. It was not a perfect galaxy. There would be other threats, other challenges, other dark times. But humanity had proven something on Vorthic Prime. They had proven that courage was stronger than cruelty. That hope was stronger than fear. That the bonds between people could survive anything. The Vorthic had messed with the wrong species. And they had paid the price. But in the end, everyone had won. Even the Vorthic, in their way. Because in losing their empire, they had gained something more valuable. They had gained a chance to become something better than what they had been. Whether they would take that chance remained to be seen. But humanity would be watching. Just in case. The stars were full of wonders. And humanity was just getting started.